Well, to review this latest economic development, I am joined by Dr. Paul Alaje, Chief Economist, SPM Professionals. Thank you so much for being on the news tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Great. So in your opinion, what's driving this upgrade? Is it oil money, is it reforms, or just global trends, or a combination?
Well, IMF made it very clear in the report that there are three major drivers to this upgrade review. First of all, I must say this review is important. It's an upgrade and it should be commended. But what are the three things? The first one is higher than expected oil production. That is, IMF is expecting, in fact, we might have seen some increase in expectation from the beginning of the year till now, unlike when we were having around 1.2, 1.3 barrels crude production per day, that has increased to about 1.5, 1.6 crude oil production per day on the average. Number two is global economic trend. Some of the crises that have happened around the world, especially around oil, in recent times seems to favor Nigeria. And what that means is that Nigeria economy, of course, that relies so much on oil and a few other things is benefiting indirectly, according to IMF. We have also seen recovery in service sector, which is the third important thing. So these are three major factors that have been stated by the same report published by the IMF. So all of this is expected to impact growth in Nigeria. But what does it mean to investors in Nigeria if the expectation for our GDP is to grow? One is confidence. People believe that the economy will be relatively stable, which I also believe. That haven't gone through some economic quagmire, by now we should be having a relative economic stability in the coming period. Now, economic stability does not signal that poverty will end, because there are risks. There are risks tied to some of these projections. The first one is volatility in oil sector, which we are not sure whether there will be any other volatility in future. We don't know which country may rise against another country. We don't know if there will be oil guns. Another one is that the IMF is also advising the Nigerian government, especially those at the subnational level, to, as a matter of urgency, invest the gains that come from subsidy removal in physical infrastructure, which includes and not limited to rails, very importantly, partnership with Nigeria Railway Corporation across different states for us to have more tracks, for us to have improved service on the tracks so that we can have increase in mobility of labor, mobility of goods, and importantly, mobility of services. That's on one side, which I hope that in the coming period we are going to see. Cash transfer system is also something that we need to be very, very careful about. Then tight monetary policy and its impact on real interest. So these are possible things that we need to be very, very careful about because they may have implication on the economy in the coming period in spite of this. So for me, is a cautious optimism that we should have. Yes, is a review upward and a signal at the same time, much better confidence than what we have some 2 years ago in 2023.
Well said. But does this then mean that Nigerians may not feel richer? The prices of food, petrol may not go down?
Now, you are now talking to economic development. Mm-hmm. Okay, so economic growth is different from economic development. If there are three people in a country and each of them earn 1 million naira per annum and one now earns 3 million naira, the GDP of that country has increased. Now, whether the income is equitably distributed is another conversation entirely. You need to measure what economists call the Gini coefficient of such country to determine whether income will be properly distributed. Now, one thing with Gini coefficient is that where it is opposite, you see economic crisis, you see poverty, you see crime in such environment where the income distribution is way off. It is way apart. Income is not properly distributed, then you always come with crisis. Now, for economic concerns, well, I cannot say that this minor growth will lead to economic expectation. To be very clear, the expectation of Nigeria is that in about 8 or 9 years' time, our GDP will become $1 trillion economy. We need 17% per annum to get to that target if other things remain equal. Other things, not all things, remain equal. We need about 17% year-on-year GDP growth rate, and we need to do this consistently for about 7 to 8 years. So this may not necessarily translate to increase in quality of life in the short or in the medium term, in the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years. You might not necessarily see that. You might not also immediately see reduction in prices of goods. That may not translate in the short term to this. What we need to do for our people to reap the benefits of some of this growth is, one, invest in physical infrastructure, health, invest in education, most importantly, physical infrastructure which is measurable in road, in rail, and in energy. If you invest in energy and you invest in rail and other that I mentioned earlier, what you will see is sporadic improvement, people engagement, and you are going to see that people's engagement in economic activity will improve. Then you see relative reduction in poverty, relative reduction in hunger. And by all means, we need to do everything to boost production. When this happens, GDP will not only grow, because in economics is one leg to discuss growth. What is most important is development. So growth is the beginning. How do we take this growth consistently to development is what is important. So currently, in economics, we say we are on necessary condition, but we need to get it to sufficient condition so that most Nigerians will start feeling the impact almost immediately.
Thank you so much. You couldn't have put it better, Dr. Paul Alaje, for speaking to the data and, of course, to the people and the impact of this forecast. Dr. Paul Alaje is the Chief Economist, SPM Professionals.